You turn from being an artist creator in the room to somebody with one of those blow up things that flap in the wind to try and get attention for your, car wash.
Can you talk about the challenges around getting work read? You have a finished screenplay. You're in the phase of now putting it out there.
Yeah. I met with someone yesterday, this friend of mine who's just had a movie, a South African movie that, screened at the Chinese theater, and it was great, and she's done so well. It's her fourth feature film. And I told her about this project that I got, and I love this project. It's a novel that I've loved since I was a child, like very young, and I've written an adaptation of it. Now I want to get it made. The first thing she said to me was, do you have a lookbook or a pitch deck? And I was like, I don't. I haven't done it yet. I've just finished the script. I think that sadly, the way it's working at the moment, at least, in South Africa to an extent, but I think it's here as well, is people don't really want to read scripts anymore. They want to see your lookbook. They want to see images and characters and I think that you have a vision for your project that you're going to make. And so it's about collaboration and speaking to illustrators, or maybe getting some images that are copyright free, or maybe even getting somebody to illustrate something for you, or getting a hold of a designer. And actually, where we move from screenwriter to promoter of our work, it's a difficult phase. Personally, I just want people to give me money to make my damn art adaptation book. Just give me millions of dollars and I'll make it. It'll be beautiful, trust me. That's never going to happen, right? People want to see that you have a vision. And that's where the lookbook comes in as something that's like a sort of an in-between phase, because I think it can be very limiting to randomly send your script out to script writing competitions, which are sometimes fine, sometimes not so fine, or hope that someone will read it. I sent the script to some people, and the people who did read it are people that I really value their input, and they did finally read it and say it was great, but they're not the money people. They're not people who are going to greenlight my movie. So I think the next step in this very weird phase, which for me is often actually a terrifying phase, and it's a vacuum. You've created this thing, and now what? It's scary. It's a vacuum. It's the space of be more creative. Now make a lookbook. Now you've got to see what's the vision that's in your head and try and make something that can sell. So like a pitch deck. And there are YouTube videos on this. You can find out what a pitch deck is and how to make one, etc. But that is probably the next phase, because it's a visual industry we're in. And because you want to generate interest, at some point people are going to want to see that. If you don't have contacts or some connection to somebody who knows somebody who can read your script, at some point they're going to want that. So that's probably my next phase, actually, is doing a lookbook of this very specific vision that I have in my mind. And I'm like, no one has this vision in my mind. But there are other movies that are like your movie that you can draw from. And No Country for Old Men has got a little bit like this movie. I can draw some images from that. And, and so there are ways you can start to do the next phase, which is the translation of your script into the screen. Lookbook or pitch deck is a way to do that. So that's probably the next phase for me.
Okay, let's say you have that completed, the lookbook, the pitch deck completed. Where do you begin to look for the, quote, money people to pitch this to?
Well, again, I want to say it's slightly different in South Africa. I can talk about it, but I don't know if it'll help. But in South Africa, we don't have the studio system. We have production companies and producers. So the next step for me is to get a producer on board who I believe in and who believes in the project. That is the real tricky thing, is finding that producer. And that's all about networking and finding other movies that are like the movie that you've created, see who's produced it and see if you can get hold of them. Now, of course, everyone wants to go to A24 and get it produced. They know that, so they've got gatekeepers, right? So there's all these mini gatekeepers up to stop you from getting to the people that can produce your thing. And it is scary, but this is where networking and connections does actually make a bit of a difference. Is in South Africa, it's a little bit easier to access the producers. We don't have the same gatekeepers. We do, but I've been in the industry now for 30 years or something, so I have contacts that I can approach. And I'm blessed in that way that there are actually people who would, if I brought them the lookbook, they would look at it. And these are producers who've made movies. Once you've got a producer attached, they are the people who are going to help you get the money. I don't know how to necessarily raise funding for a movie. I could raise a certain amount, but yeah, that's the thing, is finding that producer. But it's not easy. There's gatekeepers. It's just the hustle, really.
Sure, and there's 20 other people trying to ingratiate themselves to them.
To that.
Can you tell me why are you afraid at that stage forgive me for my naivete, but why would you be scared? Is it because you're like, I spent so much time on this thing and it means so much to me?
Yep, that's it. It's like, it's a little bit like, I've spent so much time on this thing, it means so much to me, I've created a feature film script. It's this big thing that I've done, right? And now what? It's like, I mean, I don't mind letting people read it. I think it's great. So please read it if you can. But it's getting that interest to it. It's like suddenly you turn from being an artist creator in the room to somebody with one of those blow up things that flap in the wind to try and get attention for your car wash. You have to do that, and so it's a different space altogether, and it's a tricky one to negotiate.
How does a writer get in their own way? Either with craft, the career. Maybe you've seen this from students you've kept in contact with.
I think for me, the biggest way a writer gets in their own way is, okay, I'm going to rephrase this. I think writers get in their ways in different ways at different stages of their careers as they progress. So in the beginning, sometimes you'll have a writer who's like, it's all about me and my work and my creativity, and it's very like sort of insular, focused on them. And we spoke about this earlier about not including the audience and including the production team and including people, realizing you're in a collaborative process with a lot of people that need to work together, and people are going to give money towards your thing that want to return on that money. So negotiating that space, I think very often you can get writers who end up being frustrated people who are just, they're not actually writers. They may have written a screenplay, but their day job is something else, but they're not they're not opening up to the world of filmmaking that's around them. So you do get people that are like day writers, and then they get stuck in that phase because they think that they have this great idea. Maybe they do have a great idea, actually. Very often they do, but they're so insular that they don't reach out. So that's one way of getting in the way of themselves. If you break through that and you start collaborating and maybe writing for hire on a show or something like that, and you start getting in the industry, and then you're like carrying on, and then you're like, okay, I've got to make this horror movie. I've got to do this. I've got to do that because this is the new big thing, and this is big, and it's going to get money or something like that. And you end up getting too in that world, and you forget about the insular artist. That's where you get in your way, where you just want to make a movie for the sake of making a movie, and you just want to make a movie for the sake of saying that you're a screenwriter. You forget about that little insular you that was actually there to tell a story and to say something that was important. So sometimes people get in their way further down the career where they're just like making stuff for the sake of making stuff. And you know what, it's you actually, then it becomes a thing where you're paying for your bills, and you got to make this stuff because, wow, that's my life now. I'm a screenwriter, working screenwriter, yay. What am I working on? I'm making a police procedural about something that I don't really care about. And then sometimes they get in their way again on a different level, and then you need to like find the artist, right? So this current movie that I've just written, I'm just going to say it's based on this novel. It's an incredibly beautiful novel, and I have to honor the novel and the artistic integrity that the novel was written in, and that has to be on the screen. And so I'm going to be an artist now, whether you like it or not. Most of my life I've been trained not to be an artist, not to be but that's what I have a clear vision now for this. And so I have to get back in touch with that precious self and say, no, this is what I'm going to be making now. And if you don't want to make this and you want to turn it into something else, then I'm not interested. So yeah, it depends on the career. I think you get in your way in different phases of your career, actually.
Are there rituals and things that you do, not to sound too woo-woo, but like you've been trained to be looking at other people's work for a long time, and as an author, what do you do now that this is Matthew's project? How do you take on that new hat?
It's a really great question. And I think it has to do with integrity and sort of, it's going to sound woo-woo a little bit as well, but like, actually David Lynch does this. We keep going back to David Lynch, but he does, he's been tangentially in my life for some time now. And so he really he says, stay true to the idea. And just stay true to the idea, and just got to stick to the idea. And that is it. It's like, I have this vision and I'm going to stick to it. I think a lot of the times in my life I've compromised because I've got no budget, and I'm going to do that. But if you stay true to the idea, you will create something that is that is artistic and maybe a true expression of yourself. So that's where if I can have the guts to do that, it's not easy for me, but if I can have the guts to be true to my idea, I do think that that's where some magic lies. So that is how I'll try and do that in the future. We'll see.
Do you ever feel any guilt in that, oh, wait a minute, I'm indulging myself too much?
All the time, yeah.
I should be sticking to this schedule.
Yeah, all the time, yeah. It's actually something, let me just change my position here. So actually, I don't know who said this, but it was a really interesting thing. It's like somewhere along the line when we are creating work, it's like sometimes I have this thought, and I have it a lot actually, which is like, who am I to make this thing? You know, who am I to impose my vision upon the world? And somebody said once, well, who are you not to? And I was like, oh, damn, that's deep, because who am I? I have this vision. If I'm not doing it, like who do I think I am not to do it? Anyway, so it was an interesting sort of Zen take on the whole thing.
Right.
But I do think it's interesting. And it's a thing I struggle with, to be honest. This is a real thing that's deep inside me, is like imposing myself on the world and my will upon the world, which is very often, we go through life and you get some people like politicians, and they're just like going to impose themselves on the world. They're going to drive the car, you're going to take the thing, they're going to do the thing. And I'm like, I do not want to be that. I'm like Canadian, I'm South African. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's okay. Is it okay if I do this thing? But you do have to get rid of that, because eventually you won't do anything. And if you're constantly like apologizing, or it is a little bit about imposing your will upon the world, but I think with an integrity and idea that you want to create something that's beautiful and fresh and unique, and it's going to change the world in some ways, then I think one can impose one's will in the world in a way that creates beautiful art and has a lot of integrity. And in a way, David Lynch does that, I think, which is one can learn from.